Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here. Hope you guys are doing well. A quick preview and prediction for Vasyl Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell. This fight goes down on the 31st of August. It takes place at the O2 Arena in London, and Lomachenko's WBA and WBO lightweight titles will be on the line, as will the vacant WBC lightweight title. So the winner of this fight will have 3 of the 4 major sanctioning belts, and a lot of people are actually excited by this fight. I wasn't even going to do a prediction for this fight, but you know, a lot of people are interested, so I thought I'd make one. But anyway, let's get into the tale of the tape. We will start with the champion, Vasyl Lomachenko. He's got a record of 13 wins, 1 defeat, 0 draws. 10 of those 13 wins coming by way of knockout. Luke Campbell has a record of 20 wins, 2 defeats, 0 draws. 16 of those 20 wins coming by way of knockout. So Luke Campbell actually has more fights, but that certainly doesn't mean he's more experienced. Despite Lomachenko having less fights as a pro, he's fought a much higher level of competition. He's fought the better guys. He actually has more experience as a pro in terms of top level fights. And even as an amateur, you know, Lomachenko had more fights. He fought in more tournaments. He's just the more experienced fighter all round. Obviously, I'm not saying Luke Campbell isn't experienced. He is. He's fought a couple of good guys as a pro, and as an amateur, he was a gold medalist himself. So Campbell does actually have extensive experience himself, but what I'm trying to say is Vasyl Lomachenko has seen a million Luke Campbells before throughout his boxing career. Luke Campbell has not seen a Vasyl Lomachenko. That's what I'm trying to say. But we move on to the height and reach of both fighters. Vasyl Lomachenko is 5'7" with a 65.5-inch reach, whereas Luke Campbell is actually listed as 6'9" with a 71-inch reach. So Luke Campbell is 2 inches taller, but he also has a massive 5.5-inch reach advantage. So Campbell is the taller and longer man. Also, he's just naturally bigger, thicker shoulders, you know, carries more weight. He's just a bigger dude in general. So, you know, maybe he can actually use that to his advantage. We will see. And, you know, for the record, both guys are southpaws. So now we've got the tail of the tape out of the way, let's briefly break down the styles and where both guys can have success. Straight off the bat, I've got to say, I make Lomachenko a huge favourite in this fight. In fact, I struggle to see how he loses this fight. Unless Lomachenko's arms and legs fall off, I just don't see how he loses this one. I've seen a lot of people online give Luke Campbell an outside chance, but like I say, barring a freak incident, I really can't see it. I cannot see it. I've got to be honest. Luke Campbell, you know, he is a decent boxer. I certainly believe he's a top 10 contender. He's not a bad fighter by any means. In fact, if we look at the lightweight division, I believe he's competitive with anybody inside the top 10 other than Vasyl Lomachenko. I believe he gives everybody else problems. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter by any means. Just Lomachenko is a different level of fighter, and stylistically I don't think this fight is kind to Luke Campbell. Luke Campbell does the basics very well. He's tall and upright. He's got a nice long jab out of that southpaw stance with the right hand. That jab is stinging. That jab is accurate. It's a nice shot. And the left behind it is also a really good shot. He gets full extension in those punches. He's quite effective when he's on the outside. And when he's got a guy in front of him who doesn't really offer much head movement or angles, he can pick you off and outbox you at long range. And he can time you coming in with nice snappy counters. He's also quite effective at, you know, changing the levels. He'll start upstairs, touch to the head, bang downstairs to the body. You know, Luke Campbell is a technically proficient fighter. He does all of the basics well. He's got above average punching power, decent pop on his punches. In fact, since he's moved to new trainer Shane McGuigan, he actually appears to be punching a bit harder, you know, sitting down on his punches that bit more. Luke Campbell does the basics well, And I'm not saying he's a bad fighter by any means, but I don't really see where he has success in this fight. I just don't believe he has enough variety to his game to really adjust when Lomachenko adjusts, and I just don't think he can keep up in this one. I've got to be honest. Maybe the height and reach of Luke Campbell could be a problem for Lomachenko early on. You know, that is a substantial advantage after all, and early on, maybe Campbell could nick a few rounds against Lomachenko, while Lomachenko is kind of figuring out what's in front of him, you know, while he's downloading that data. Maybe at that stage, Campbell could pick up a couple of rounds, but after that, you know, I really do believe he'll struggle in this fight. I just believe the in and out movement of Lomachenko will be too much for Luke Campbell, and the angles that Lomachenko attacks at will give Luke Campbell fits. If you go back and watch the Linares fight, in that fight, when Linares was more flat-footed and, you know, standing in front of Luke Campbell, Campbell had success, he was boxing well, and he was scoring some good shots. But when Linares really upped it, when he let go of his punches, when he attacked from angles, that's when Campbell started to get overwhelmed, and that's when he started to drop rounds in that fight. I think Luke Campbell will struggle with a guy who attacks at angles. Because he's such a straight puncher, he's a guy who likes to kind of stay upright, keep you on the outside. He's very methodical. And I just don't believe he's got the style to adjust to that. You know, the movement of Lomachenko, when Lomachenko's stepping around him and popping him with shots. You know, I just don't believe it serves into Luke Campbell's style, if I'm being completely honest. Another trait of Luke Campbell's game, in my opinion, he's shown a tendency to get overwhelmed in certain fights, one of which being the Linares fight, like I said. When Linares really stepped it up, I felt Campbell was second best. It was when Linares boxed with Campbell, that's when Campbell had success. And even in the Ivan Mendy fight, now this was a different type of fight, but Campbell was overwhelmed by Mendy's pressure. He really was. And up close, Mendy was really working Luke Campbell on the inside. That's another area in this fight I could see Lomachenko having a lot of success. If Lomachenko can get under the Luke Campbell jab, slip under the jab, get on the inside, at that stage, you know, Lomachenko could have a field day on the inside. I don't think Luke Campbell is particularly great on the inside. You know, if Lomachenko gets to the inside, Campbell really needs to look at tying up or implement some uppercuts to his game up close, because I believe Campbell's inside game isn't really that developed, despite being an Olympic gold medalist. So that's another tendency to Campbell's game that worries me going into this one, his tendency to get overwhelmed and the lack of inside game. And expanding on the point where I said he gets overwhelmed in certain fights, I could actually see a scenario in this one, what I call paralysis by analysis. And that's where you've got a guy in front of you, the guy is giving you angles, he's feinting, he's giving you different looks, and you're observing it, you're taking it all in, but because you're concentrating so hard on what your guy's doing, you're not really letting go of your punches, you know, you're not really, firing back, I guess, you're reading too much into the feints, into the movement, and you're not letting go of your own punches. We saw the same scenario in Tyson Fury versus Vladimir Klitschko. Fury was herky-jerky, moving his head, feinting, faking with shots. Klitschko was seeing all this, but it basically tamed him, almost like a snake charmer. And I could see a similar scenario in this one where Campbell's got Lomachenko in front of him, who's constantly stepping around him, who's constantly feinting, who's constantly changing levels, and I could see it being a deterrence for Luke Campbell to actually throw shots. I think he may be reading too much into Lomachenko's movements, his feints, etc. And if Lomachenko does bite on a feint and he gets countered a few times, don't be surprised to see Luke Campbell really kind of get discouraged, the output drop, and he kind of fights a low output fight from then on in. But ultimately, I just believe Lomachenko in this one has far too many tools, he's got far too much variety, and he should win this fight fairly comfortably. I do believe Luke Campbell will do a much better job than the previous Brit who fought Lomachenko, Anthony Crolla. I think Campbell's just a better fighter than Crolla. I know Crolla's been a world champion and Campbell hasn't, but I just believe Campbell's a better technician. I think he's better overall on a head-to-head basis. So I expect Campbell to go rounds. And potentially, like I said, the range early on of Campbell could give Lomachenko a few problems. But once Lomachenko figures him out, I expect Lomachenko to be peppering Campbell, getting in and out. On the inside, I expect him to be working the body of Luke Campbell, and eventually I expect him to chop the tree down and stop Luke Campbell late on to the body. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Lomachenko land a flash knockdown early on in this fight. You know, not a big shot, but a shot that puts Campbell down. I could see that happening also. We've seen that in certain fights in Luke Campbell's career, you know, where he's been off balance and he's been knocked down. A good example of that is in the Argenis-Mendes fight. He was caught in that fight off balance against a guy in Mendes who weren't really a strong puncher, but he was awkward, he was crafty, and he got dropped in that one. Don't be surprised to see something similar early on in this fight. So, yeah, ultimately, I just believe Luke Campbell isn't at this level, well, not at the Lomachenko level, and I believe he'll get beat in this fight by a late stoppage, more than likely to the body. I've got Vasyl Lomachenko by a late stoppage. That's how I see this fight. Share your thoughts below. Do you guys give Luke Campbell more of a chance than I do? Or are you on the same line of thinking as me? Share your thoughts below. Peace.